The generation ahead doesn't like to talk about their money.
Yes.
They're very closed mouths and they're very quiet. And then at the point that something happens, we're scrambling trying to figure it out. We are going to be the largest owners of real estate ever.
When I die, you got 30 minutes in the church. You in there, two people sing two songs, get me out, get me in the ground, move on. I've already lit. Like, we don't need to have that much stuff. Welcome to another episode of Major Money Matters. And today, this is going to be a great conversation where you and I are going to be learning a lot about estate planning and legacy planning. We're happy to welcome Miss Andrea Fowler from Legacy Path Solutions to educate us about how things should be put in place to make sure you ensure the success of your property and your estate after you pass, or making sure you're in the right position to leave a legacy to your family. Andrea, how are you today? Good to have you on the channel.
Major, I am great and excited to be here this morning to have an opportunity to speak with you as well as to speak with your audience and talk about something that is not really discussed much, but it becomes very, very important as time goes on in the ownership of your home, even during the time that you are owning your home and you're still alive.
Awesome. So before we get into that, let's get into your background and understand your positioning in this space. You have a lot of education and experience. You've been licensed realtor, you licensed mortgage professional, and now your focus is on estate planning. How did you evolve into the path that you're currently on?
Well, let's say it like this. Age has a way of bringing some um, motivation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one of the things that after being in the industry for so long, as well as getting to be a person of a certain age, as we say it these days, understanding what's going on in the market. There's a term that's being put into the market. It's called the silver tsunami. I don't know if you've heard that term before.
I have. We're going to dig into that a lot.
Okay, awesome. So the silver tsunami is really impacted me personally. And because I've been in the real estate and mortgage space for so long, a lot of people that I have helped along the way are now coming back to me with questions related to what do I do next? What do I do as it relates to transition? What do I do as it relates to putting my home in a trust? Should I sell? Should I downsize? Should I, do a reverse mortgage? All of these questions started coming. And so I realized that let me get the education, because that's what I'm big on. First, education, and begin to educate not only myself, but be a better resource for my clients.
Yeah, and I think that's important because to be focused on education, because I'm heavy on education, which is why we're having this conversation. And when we started having our first initial conversation, and I said, hold up, wait, let's not dig into that. I'm going to learn, the things that you're sharing with me as the audience learns them. So, there's a lot of information that you're going to share with me today that I don't know, because I get questions when people in the escrow process of how do I take title on my home? Do I want take title one way or the other? Which one is better? Sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, that's your title officer's responsibility to share that with you. But even the title officers don't really know the ins and outs of things. They're just went through training and say, hey, these are your options. It's your responsibility to figure it out. And some of the title officers will say, hey, I can't tell you that because that's kind of legal counsel on certain things. So first of all, let's talk about the silver tsunami and what that is.
The silver tsunami is basically the baby boomers are now getting to retirement. We are going to be the largest owners of real estate ever, which means that those that are on the top end of the tsunami, those born in the 40s, 44, are now flipping over into the 80s. What that means is mom can no longer potentially live on her own anymore, or dad may have already passed and we've got to look at downsizing. Mom may need to go into independent living or even maybe assisted living. And what do you do at the home? You have a child that has their own family, their own kids, their own job. All of this is just really coming to a head in one place at one time. But what's the even bigger portion is that over 65% of people have nothing in place as relates to legacy planning. And a lot of those who do have something in place have what our generation has been primarily taught, which is a will, which of course guarantees probate. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but it doesn't allow you to privately pass your assets to who you want to pass them to in the way that you want to pass them without court interference.
This is a great conversation because when I talk to people, they will often say, "Hey, look, I want to build generational wealth." It's possible for you to build wealth, but it not be structured in the right way. It will not go past your generation, no matter how much your desire is to build quote unquote generational wealth. You can have the taglines and everything. And oftentimes I speak to a lot of people who know the right words to say, know the taglines, but don't do the work of putting the right structures in place.
It's all about dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Very minimal paperwork, really, but it has been presented in such a way where it seems overwhelming. And so people really have paralysis of analysis and they do nothing.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this first. Granted, the previous generation, slightly before our generation, if they got taught about a will, that was a step in the right direction. We're not faulting anyone for being taught about a will.
Or
Exactly. There are other things that we need to be in place. So let me ask you this, and I haven't asked you this directly. I may be putting you in the spot with this question. What are some key essential things that you think an individual should have in place if they own property?
if you go to my website,
Mhm.
which is legacypathsolutions.com, go to products, you will see one of our products, which is the Essential Plan. And this was developed specifically to answer the question that you're asking, Major. You're going to be in one of two positions at some point in your life. You're either going to receive the call or you're going to have to make the call. At the point that that call happens, what is in place for you to respond? Either you're on the trustee end of it or you are the person that is having to be taken care of, so to speak. With the Essential Plan, there are some specific documents that everybody needs to have in place. Number one, you need to have your durable powers of attorney. Those can go in effect immediately, and oftentimes people don't do them immediately because of age or, health. Everything is good. So they're just wanting to make sure that if something happens, things are in place. So the powers of attorney can be in the event of incapacity. So that means that someone has the ability to make financial decisions, financial moves, things like that. And that includes medical and financial. The second thing that you need to have are what we call health directives. And a health directive allows you to speak at this point and tell us what you want done in the case of your incapacity. Do you want to be on life support? Do you want to be an organ donor? And of course, it gives the person who has that responsibility instructions and directions so that they're not lost or trying to figure it out or even listening to a lot of different voices about what they think you want. You can specify it up front and that person has the information. Now, those are the two big things, your medical and your financial power of attorneys. Then, of course, you're going to have your health directives, as we talked about. Now, let's talk about the property. The property, which is where we kind of started the conversation as far as titling goes, is going to be important because it is going to pass through probate if you have nothing established to keep it private.
Well, let me interrupt right there, Andrea.
Okay.
So we started talking about the property, okay? And if you're on this channel, you're probably in the process of buying a home or having bought a home or something like that, and you're getting more education about that, and that's fine. So you're saying durable power of attorney and the health directive, no matter what, if you are a living, breathing soul who is an adult,
For the age of 18.
over the age of 18, you need to have these things in place. The property is totally irrelevant.
Correct. About it like this, Major. You're 18 or you have an 18-year-old child and they are getting ready to go off to college or to the military. Like we laugh and say the frontal lobe has not developed for them to be able to make, smart decisions. But the law says they are an adult. If they happen to get into a wreck on their way to college, the only thing that the hospital can do is call you as next of kin and let you know the wreck. You are not able to make any medical or financial decisions. You can't get grades. You can't get financial information from the college unless you have a power of attorney and a health directive and a HIPAA authorization. The HIPAA authorization is where you give authorization to the doctors and the hospital to release your medical information to the person that is on your medical power of attorney. So as a parent, wouldn't you want to be able to call the hospital and them give you the condition of your child? But let's bring it on up into the age of the 40s or so. You're married, you have children, something happens to your spouse or to you. You want someone to, again, have the authorization to speak either with you or on behalf of you. And then let's go up to the baby boomer age group where now health concerns and, different things come into place. You want to maybe have your children and your spouse to have that authorization to do things on your behalf as well. So at every stage of life, as you mentioned just a second ago, the powers of attorney and health directives are critically important for every adult to have in their file cabinet.
Young hubris is sometimes amazing to me. If you're 40 years of age or over, you got to get these things in place.
Absolutely.
Although all of these, I will say, misfortune or accidents does not discriminate based on age. However, those of us who are, feel like we're doing okay day to day, we will have these thoughts that say, you know what, I have more time. I'll get that in place later. And we both come across people who don't have things in place or death happens unexpectedly. I always thought unexpected death was the biggest oxymoron that there is because very few people statistically expect their death. All death is unexpected death unless you have some terminal disease or something like that. These are things that people have to say, look, you are going to leave this earth eventually, and these things need to actually be in place.
Exactly. One of the things that we have to recognize is that regardless of how old you are, you have worked a certain amount of time once you get to the adult age and you have acquired something. Whether you have a bank account, if you have a job, you have a life insurance policy most often as a part of your benefit. If you have a car, these are things that you have worked for. They are assets that through your day-to-day labor you have acquired. And at the point that you acquired them, they were very important to you. You want to make sure that they pass to someone privately that you trust, that you want to benefit from it in the event of your unexpected timing of your death, because all death is expected. Let's be real.
That's right.
It is the timing that's the unexpected.
Absolutely. And primarily unknown.
Exactly.
So now we've got the basics out of the way. If you're a living human breathing adult, those are the basics that we should get out of the way. I want to tackle the property part because this is very interesting because sometimes people buy real estate in multiple different situations, whether they are married individuals with children, married, no kids, or what I call dinks, my favorite type of buyers, dual income, no kids. Then you have people who are unmarried and buying together. And then you have people who are blended families who one person has children, the other person has children. Everybody's trying to figure out how to protect these people. You're doing a loan. You can be from contract to close in 2 weeks and you're signing for documents on a paper and you didn't put the right stuff in place to make sure things were allocated as you were expected, or you didn't have the right conversation before you bought the house together.
Exactly.
Especially for my people who are dating and they buy a house together, which whole different conversation. Let's talk about this. what are the things you need to have in place if you own a property with someone or buying a property?
One of the very first things, and I'm in the state of Texas, and different states have different laws. I am not authorized to practice law. So this is just information and education. There is a document called a transferable on death deed. It's called a TOD. Basically, what that document does is it allows the owner of the property to pass the title or ownership of the property to someone that they choose outside of probate without court intervention privately to give that person the authorization to do whatever needs to be done with that house. And think of it like this. Let's take the most unexpected situation. Husband and wife, the unmarried couple living together, they're both on title, but there is no survivorship in their title. So that means that one person owns half, the other person owns half. One person passes, they have an heirship line for their half of the property, and then the other person has an heirship line for their half of the property. One person passes, but they do not have survivorship on the title. The heirship enters in. Now the person that's remaining now owns that property with the heirs of the other person. Now they want to sell the property. The heirs can say, you can sell it, but we want our partner, our person's part of the equity upon sale in cash. That's a whole nother thing, but this is how entangled it can be. So one of the things you want to look at is having a TOD, transferable on death deed, which means that it transfers directly to the person that you would choose, so they have the unencumbered ability to make decisions about that house. That is one of the first things that you need to look at your title to be sure.
I have some questions for you on that. The person that the deed is transferring to upon the death of person A, does person B have to be listed on the title of the home or on the deed of that property?
No. Person A and person B are on title. Of course, they're going to make sure that each other are the first line of transfer. So if you're married, you're going to make sure your wife is transferable on death in the event of your passing. And then your wife is going to do the same thing. Then there's a secondary in the event that you have passed and your wife is still alive, and then she passes. Who is that then going to pass directly to privately? So it's something that you want to make sure you update regularly and you keep current based on whatever life life events are happening in your household or in your family. The person that you're transferring the house to does not have to be on title.
Now, can the deed be transferred to a trust upon your death?
What you would really want to do is already have it in the trust, so that the trust will be able to handle it privately. And the great thing about that is that there are laws that protect you as it relates to title insurance and all of those things if you put your home into a trust. And then, of course, there are other benefits of having your home in a trust as well.
And we should note here, if you pass, there are two factors. You have the deed or the ownership of the property. We are not discussing the mortgage of that property. That's a whole different conversation.
Right. So this is why these conversations are so critical for families, because if you're still have a mortgage and the property is going to say pass to a child. Let's go back to the silver tsunami. You're in your 70s, you still have a mortgage because of course we know people are purchasing homes later in life. And if you're purchasing a home in your 40s, you're going to have a mortgage into your 70s. So of course there may still be a mortgage and then the unexpecteds come up. Once that home has passed, it does still remain. Insurance still remains, taxes still remain, all of those things remain. So a conversation and an understanding with whomever the house is going to be passing to on what you would like to happen with the house. Do you want it to be sold and all of the debts against the house paid, and then the equity divided among my nephew, my niece, especially and we have a lot of single people with no children. that are passing? Where do you want your equity to go? How do you want it to be distributed? All of these questions need to be answered because the trustee education is critical in the event of doing estate planning because the trustee needs to understand your wishes and what the responsibility is with whatever is coming to them.
I often find them as well, and I'll tell you this, Andrea, my most qualified demographic of buyer is single females. For whatever reason, they my most qualified demographic is going to be single females. But I think we don't do enough to educate them about what happens next when they pass. Okay.
Let me tell you
If they
let
pass.
me tell you something real quick.
Yeah.
Single female, PhD, paid her home off, and she was talking to me about what her options were. She wasn't yet 62, so reverse mortgage was not an option for her. But I asked her the question, do you have your essential authorization documents in place? And she was like, what's that? Those were those documents we talked about early. I said, okay, so we'll get that taken care of. Let's talk about transferable on death deed in the event of your passing. Who do you want to take care of your property? It's paid for. Who's going to technically inherit it? I just figured that my sister would take care of it.
That you just figured. Yes.
I just figured my sister would take care of it. Well, if you don't give your sister legal authorization to make those decisions, she will not. The court will step in and make the decisions for her. So I said, okay, easy. Let's do a transferable on death deed and put your sister in place so that upon your passing, she has the authorization to sell it or, she can rent it out. I said, okay, so how old is your sister? Oh, we're 18 months apart. So chronologically, what does that say? The likelihood that they may or may not precede each other in passing is there. Well, because your sister is so close in age to you, you need to start thinking about a secondary trustee because she's single, no kids. That's where it got a little sticky. Believe this, she went down to file the transferable on death deed because it is something you have to go to your county records and file along with your title and your deed so that it is on record. So at the point of sale or whatever, the title company can pull it and see that this person has authorization. She had purchased her house 27 years ago. She had paid the house off with the current lender, but the original lender from 27 years ago never released the lien. If her sister had just happened to get ownership of the house, you and I both know, Major, what kind of problem that would have been because her sister would not have had any clue who the lender was. Of course, she knew who the original lender was and that they had sold and they were now this credit union. As 27 years ago, they were that credit union. But all I'm trying to say is it's critically important to think about these practical things when you are purchasing a home. And it's very critical to have these practical conversations with your family, those that you're wanting to, handle or take care of you in the case of incapacity or, passing, how you want your property to pass and how it should be titled. That is critical.
This is the type of conversations that we actually need to have. So we started off with our two essential documents, our durable power of attorney, our health directive, which, we've said you got to have those in place if you are a living, breathing adult. Now we bought a property. We have the TOD, the transferable on death deed. If you are married or unmarried, no matter what your situation is, you need this document. If you want to secure the longevity of the home within your family line or with who you want the property to pass to, you have to have this in place, or a judge who does not know you at all is going to be making decisions about your life. What are some other things that we need to have in place if we own a property?
One of the things you want to look at, because if you already own a property and you've already closed and you're wanting to go back and just check, One of the things you want to check for is, how is your home being held in title? Is it being held as husband and wife? Is it being held as joint tenants? Is it being held as joint tenants with rights of survivorship? And I'm going to pause right there, because that is the critical point. It is called by operation of law. So there are three different ways that you property transfers, and I'm going to refer to my notes. One is by operation of law, and that is with joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. What that means is that the two people that have ownership of the property, if one passes, survivorship automatically passes to the other, and vice versa. That is where a lot of times these title issues can be cleared up or bypassed easily. But a lot of times the lenders or our loan officers choose joint tenants. There's no survivorship included. The other way that it passes is by probate court, and that's if it is in an individual's name only. That is why the card becomes super important, because it is guaranteed to go through probate if it's in the name of an individual only, or it says tenants in common. Probate, 9 to 24 months. It's slow and it is expensive. The third way, which we mentioned a few minutes ago, is by contract. And that is where it's held in a revocable living trust. And that's where it transfers privately according to the trust instructions, and it bypasses, the state system. Those are the three critical things that you need to make sure you have in place or corrected on your title when you purchase a home.
Now, because I'm a mortgage professional, I think about things in a mortgage way. Although we're talking about the title way, and something that you said critical there, you said probate court could be 9 to 24 months.
Exactly.
If something's tied up in probate, you still got this mortgage going over here.
Who's paying the mortgage?
Who is paying the mortgage? Who has responsibility for the mortgage? And if you don't align this correctly, you can actually have somebody paying the mortgage on a home, and probate is settled, and they don't even own the home that they paid the mortgage on, because a judge made a totally different decision than you thought they were going to make, because you didn't put things in place.
Or the cost of probate has eaten up the equity in the home, because, and I'll tell you this, probate costs are typically 6% to 8%, and it's calculated on the home's, check this out, market value.
Wow. The market value of the home.
Not the equity. Say a $500,000 home with a $450,000 mortgage could still cost upwards of $40,000 in probate fees.
That could be critical, because you can have somebody who bought a house at 30, they pass away at 60. Let's say that house is paid off. The market value of that home they bought at $400,000, 30 years could easily be at, $1.1 million. And you're calculating that. It's ridiculous.
That is how the courts make money. That is why it's so critically important that we educate people to just understand, dot the I's and cross the T's on the front end, so that on the back end, your legacy is protected. Remember, the home is usually the largest purchase or the largest asset that a family will have in their lifetime. And when you're talking about the majority of people having what we consider small estates, you have a home, some vehicles, retirement, maybe some investments, liquid assets, just, a regular small estate that can easily destroy it.
When we're talking about all of these things that go on, and we see a lot of situations, and the challenge that I have with most people is the arrogance of believing that you know how life is going to play out. You have no idea how this is going to play out. And many people have different situations where, you might be married, but you have kids that are 8, 9, 10 years of age. And, you'll have a conversation with them and they're like, hey, when I die, I want my home to pass to my kids. What if that's in 2 years? Who's going to take care of your estate or take care of your home or sell your home for the benefit of your kids? And these things simply are not in place. We touched on this a little bit, but I want to go back to it. Can we talk about the difference between a will and what other documents you should or should not have in place, even if you have a will, to make sure you're in a right place or in right standing and make sure your estate is secure?
One thing that you want to understand about a will is just instructions to the court.
Stop right there. The will is an instruction to the court. What are you guaranteeing?
Probate.
You're saying up front that you want to go through probate, and this is what you would want the court to do. And the only person that can decide what happens with that will or ensure that will is executed is a court. So you, or anytime you say court, you are saying lawyer. Anytime you say lawyer, you are saying money. So do you recommend people have a will, or do you recommend people have supplementary documents, from the will in order to ensure cost is decreased?
Recommend that people review their own personal estate, determine how they want their assets to pass, ensure that those assets are going to pass privately directly to who they want them to pass to, and then execute the documents necessary to make that happen. A will is not necessary in all cases, depending on what your estate looks like. If you are 30 and you just bought your first home, and you just barely got on your first job, and you just bought your first Land Rover, a will is not necessary for those assets to pass privately to whom you determine. A transferable on death deed can pass the property to your parents, who we would assume, if you're 30, may still be around, and they will know how to dispose of it. The TOD, which is a transferable on death for your vehicle, means you just have a document that they would take to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the title would then transfer immediately into the name of whomever you want to give the vehicle to, without them having to pay all the taxes and buy it, all of those things. If you have your beneficiary designations on your life insurance, if you have your beneficiary designations on your retirement accounts, all of those things are up to date. Guess what? Whomever you choose to be the trustee, and when I say trustee, it's not a trustee like in your will, a trustee meaning the person you trust to take care of these things. They will have all of your instructions and all of the authorization, which is the critical thing, to go ahead and make sure that those things happen without the expense of probate nor the involvement of an attorney.
I was thinking Todd in the sense of a home, but Todd applies to vehicles and things like that.
And liquid assets like checking accounts and savings accounts, because it's not a TOD, it's a POD, which stands for payable on death. A lot of people don't like to have joint accounts, or they don't like to have other people on their accounts, because they don't necessarily want people to know how much money they have, how they spend their money, or have access to be able to use their money at will. But you should have what's called a POD on all of your liquid assets. That just simply means that person can go into the bank on your passing, present a copy of the death certificate, and they will then have access to your funds. Because if there is no one on the account, if it's only in your name, in order for the family to get access to those funds, guess what has to happen?
The probate.
There you go. Let me make it even more mind-blowing. Where's the money coming from to pay the house? They can't have access to that money, remember? Because you don't have a POD.
That's right.
Now the mortgage has to be paid. Oh, wait a minute. It's going to take a while to sell the property. What about the electricity? What about the water bill? Where's that money coming from? So you have to think broadly, because you have to set up things, especially when you purchase a home, Major, because it is such a major asset, no pun intended, and so many things, vertical things attached to it. On the back end could allow these institutional investors who just sit and watch the tax rolls to wait until they come on board, and then they scoop them up. And this is how neighborhoods start becoming gentrified and families losing. Like we say, what happens to Big Mama's house?
For every video you see on YouTube or whatever that talks about buying houses with foreclosed taxes, or buying houses at a foreclosure sale, and for every person that successfully does it, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that for the person who does it, I'm not casting stones or anything, there's a family on the other end of that transaction that likely didn't have this conversation that we're having right now.
And a lot of times it's a family where, and we have to recognize the generational communication gaps.
Yes.
The generation ahead doesn't like to talk about their money.
Yes.
They're very closed mouths and they're very quiet. And then at the point that something happens, we're scrambling trying to figure it out.
To be totally transparent with you right now, I mean, my mom is 60 some odd years old. We have transparent conversations about, look, when you die, where do you want to be buried? What do you want to do? All of this stuff. Do you want a funeral? I've given my family direct direction. Like, look, when I die, you got 30 minutes in the church. You in there, two people sing two songs, get me out, get me in the ground, move on. I've already lived. Like, we don't need to have that much stuff. The thing I'm thinking about now is like, we would love it if all of our family trees were very direct. But we know in this society, we have this person was married to this person, and then they got divorced and they got married to this person, had this child with this person, this child from this. And then you have conversations and stuff where people will say, well, actually, Major told me this. We were out to eat one day. He told me this. I know he wanted this. Major could have had some spicy Chinese food when he said that. Could have been the dumbest thing he said.
Grandparents leaving acres and acres of property. And remember, there were much bigger families back in the day. So you have 40 acres, 100 acres being left, and you've got 7 kids that are all in title or ownership because dad and mom have now passed. Let's look at a situation where all of the siblings are in their 70s. They're blessed to all be here. When one sibling passes, that whole heirship situation is going to come into play, and now it's going to be a nightmare.
I'm dealing with that situation right now with some family land that we have in Barnwell, North Carolina, and I get emails on it all the time. We want to sell there's like 8 siblings. There are literally 80 people involved in this decision. I'm 4 generations down, going back from my great grandpa Major. I'm all the way down, and they're telling me like, Major, hey, we need an input on you on what to do. But the point is, all of those people have a right, and you have one family line that wants to sell, another family line that wants to keep the stuff in the family because for historical factors and everything. It can be very, very frustrating. That's the problem, and it's
Institutional investors are waiting.
absolutely. What is the best way? How do you like connecting with people, and what does their process look like when they come talk to you? Because we think the success is at the end of when we hold up the closing table, at the closing table, we hold up the sign and the key. Hey, I bought a house and everything. That house could not be yours in a couple of years. So we want to make sure that house stays in your generation. So I'm going to be connecting people with you saying, hey, look, we're not done yet. You need to put these people in places. But what does that process look like when people come talk to you and meet with you?
So people can reach us by, of course, going to the website again, Legacy Path Solutions, click on Contact Us, and then just simply go in there and connect. From there, I will reach out, or my managing partner, Jackie Jones, or one of our other support specialists will reach out and do a discovery call. A discovery call is about a 30-minute call. And this is where it's kind of an interview style call where we really get to understand where you are, what is it that you have, what is it that you're trying to accomplish. And then from that point, we determine what packages or what path is the most efficient path for where you're trying to go. Then we present those to you. They would choose what path they want to go. We would then introduce them or get them set up with their digital vault. In addition to those documents that are necessary, the powers of attorney, the health directives, to all of those things, those other benefits that I shared with you are part of your digital vault, where you can put in the letter to your family. You can put in your funeral wishes, all the things that you want. And then, of course, from there, we get the finalization and notarization of all of your documents, and then you are good to go. What we would like our mortgage partners and real estate partners actually to do is think along the lines of gifting this at closing. I know that we love to give, coupons and baskets and candles and all of that, but this is a much more long-lasting gift at closing to your clients 30 days after that closing, once the title has already been recorded that is the time that we then want to sit down and meet with the client face to face so that we can get these documents in place. Because again, depending upon how that property was purchased, if they're a single person, if they're a married couple, if they are unmarried couple, no matter how that property was purchased, you want to make sure that they have the proper documents in place for longevity.
Well, Andrea, I could tell you that is something that I think I'm going to take on as a challenge to gift this to people who close with us. This is something that is, it's a conversation that's needed. Number one, so I thank you for having the conversation. Thank you for developing a product that actually matters in our communities. And thank you for building a system and thinking beyond yourself and figuring out how you can assist us in alleviating some of the challenges that we have. Because I get tired of seeing the flyers for the GoFundMe and, the chicken fried dinner at sale at church to raise money for this and make sure houses are taken care of. Take care of your families. Make sure this is taken care of. Make sure you have the right things in place. Andrea, thank you for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. It's been educational for me. And there's some things.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to speak to your listeners and to really be of service to the community in educating and bringing this information forward. The Silver Tsunami is here. Tell your mom we're in the middle of it. We may be on the back end of it, but it is coming. And we definitely want to make sure that, like you, all of our children are educated, trustees are educated, so that the right decisions are going to be made at the right time.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me, Andrea, and we will see you next time on the next episode of Major Money Matters. God bless you. Thanks again, Andrea.